Draft, and more draft talk.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, we're wrapping up the week, everybody, with a Friday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Matt Derry with you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us on this Friday, April 11th, and a Saturday, April 12th. Thanks for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcast. That includes on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. Please subscribe, throw your comments up there, have some fun, talk Lions with us daily right here on Locked On Lions. Thank you to our everydayers that are out there. Shout outs to you. You watch the show, you listen to the show daily, you hit me up on the social medias. We appreciate you. Luke Bonner, shout out to Luke. I was talking to some luminaries today at the Troy Chamber of Commerce, mainly those from the great BAE networks. And they were telling me about Luke Bonner, who loves the show. So, Luke, we love you back, man. Thank you so much for supporting us. Locked On Lions today for this Friday edition is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. If you missed yesterday's show, Nick Baumgardner was fantastic. Loved talking to Nick from The Athletic. He does a fantastic job. Both he and Colton Pouncey cover the Lions, the draft for theathletic.com. They also have that Welcome to Detroit podcast. But Nick was great yesterday. We talked a lot about draft prospects. And Nick mentioned something yesterday that I didn't really pick up on until I rewatched the show. And that is he did a 3-round mock draft the other day and mentioned that he had Josiah Stewart selected in, what did Nick? Nick had Josiah Stewart going in the 3rd round with pick number 102 to the Lions as one of 2 edge rushers. And so I should have asked Nick about where he was going with the first pick and everything else, because he had kind of referenced that he had Stewart going in round 3 and JT Tuamaloa from Ohio State, the edge rusher, going at pick 60. So I didn't really do a good enough job and say, hey, listen, who'd you have him taking in the 1st round? So we're going to talk about that coming up today. Also, Pro Football Focus put out a great article about the state of all 32 NFL teams heading into the draft, what their needs still are. We'll tell you what PFF thinks the Lions need to be doing in the draft coming up. Aidan Hutchinson is at the Masters. That is correct. The Lions' best defensive player, face of the franchise for some, is down at the Masters. So he's walking the course and is there, as a spectator. He caught up with Marty Smith from ESPN. We will play you that back and forth coming up momentarily as well. And we will have a call of the day. If you want to be our call of the day, go to www.speakpipe.com. That is speakpipe.com/Derry, DERY podcast page. Leave a voicemail and we might play it right here on the program. All right, we're getting close to the draft. We are now less than 2 weeks away. Next week, I believe the Locked On mock draft will come out. I have made my selection for the Lions. Should I tease it a little bit? I will say the Lions in my mock draft get a player that in many mock drafts wouldn't be there at 28. That's your first tease for next week. So that should be a lot of fun when that comes out next week. And I have heard recently from the legendary Locked On Packers host and the most hated man in Detroit sports, Pete Bukowski. Peter wants to do something next week too, so just stay tuned for that. All right, 3-round mock draft. I mentioned this earlier. Nick Baumgardner was on yesterday from The Athletic, and he did do a 3-round mock draft, which came out, I want to say, yesterday. And in this 3-round mock draft, many of the Lions' best options for edge rusher are off the board in this mock. Abdul Carter's gone. Shamar Stewart is gone. Michael Williams is gone. Derek Harmon is gone. Mike Green is gone. And even Donovan Ezraku is gone. So in this mock draft, Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic has the Lions with their first pick at number 28 in the first round. He has Brad Holmes staying there. And he has the Lions taking Kelvin Banks, the offensive lineman from Texas. Now, Nick did reference Banks yesterday. He writes at theathletic.com, the Lions' biggest need is edge, and it also wouldn't shock me if should Brad Holmes try to get younger at receiver. Jamison Williams' long-term future on the roster is anything but certain. But Detroit also has uncertainty at guard. Banks, who played tackle in college, should translate well to a guard spot in the NFL and could potentially be a long-term answer opposite Penei Sewell. Very high RAS score, 8.26 RAS, which we know Brad Holmes loves the RAS. So here's a player that I think would be a very, very safe pick. Very, very solid, big fella. And with all these edge rushers off the board, why wouldn't the Lions take the best available player? And why wouldn't they create, as they have stated, some competition for both Christian Mahogany and Graham Glasgow? Because the Lions right now have some uncertainty at guard. Last year, you knew Glasgow was moving over left guard, and you knew you had Kevin Zeitler at the right side. Now, yes, while Mahogany played very well last year in limited snaps, he played great against the Bears and graded out really well for a rookie. You never know if that's just a one-hit wonder and one-trick pony game for him. Although I think Christian Mahogany is going to be a starter either on the right or left side this year, depending on what the Lions do. Glasgow had his struggles a year ago, getting a little bit up there in age, but the Lions still like him. He's obviously still on the roster. We know he can play backup center as well. But Kelvin Banks from Texas is certainly intriguing at number 28. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State is another name to keep an eye on too, if they want to go offensive lineman and if they want to get somebody that's there at 28. Now, the guy that I would love to get for the Lions certainly is Tyler Booker, because I think he's the best offensive lineman in this draft class, but I don't think he's going to be there at 28. All right, so in the 3-round mock, the second round with pick number 60, the Lions select JT Tuimaloloio. I never get his name right. We all know JT, the edge rusher from Ohio State, undersized, wore number 44, could get around the edge, etc. This is the type of player that, Nick Baumgardner believes could be there for the Lions. And again, at number 60, if the Lions don't get an edge rusher early, they're going to take one in the second round. They almost have to. Knowing that the need that they have. JT is 6'4", 265, a good edge setter, a solid run defender, really high motor. There were games, though, if you watched JT play at Ohio State, where he was just undersized. If he went up against a really big left tackle, or if they moved him onto the other side, right tackle, that's why he's not a first-round pick, is that he just at times got bowled over by bigger guys. But really good player, and obviously coming from a winning program in Ohio State. And we know Brad Holmes likes to draft players from pretty big name programs. Then in the third round, as we said before, Baumgardner has the Lions taking Josiah Stewart, the edge rusher from Michigan, at 102 in the third round. Baumgardner says, quote, the Lions double dipped at cornerback last season. Don't be surprised they do the same thing this year while searching for pass rush help opposite Aidan Hutchinson. Bringing an Ohio State or Michigan player to Detroit always makes for a good time. These two would complement each other well. JT and, of course, Josiah Stewart. So are either of these guys, JT or Josiah, lock, stock, and barrel starters going into next year and knocking off and edging out Marcus Davenport to be that dominant edge rusher? I don't think so. But you are adding two young players. And Nick talked about this yesterday. Two young players to the team that are controllable. They both have a lot of upside. They both have great motors, and both are high character players. Josiah Stewart was interviewed by the Lions at the Combine. He was interviewed by the Lions at the Senior Bowl. He was interviewed by the Lions here, and he was at local pro day. They've had multiple conversations with him, and they know him well, having seen him play right down the street in beautiful Washtenaw County. So there you go. I would not be opposed at all to an offensive lineman in the first round and two edge rushers after that. Not at all. That would be, to me, a really, really good first 3 rounds and adding a lot of depth at positions that the Lions certainly needed. All right, what does Pro Football Focus say about the Lions' draft needs and where the Lions are, the state of the roster right now, with about less than 2 weeks to go before the draft? We will get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. And folks, as we told you earlier, Locked On Lions is brought to you by Nissan. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart. The guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the Lions forward as we look ahead to next season. I would say this week's Armada clear-cut Player of the Week is Tyler Booker, offensive guard from Alabama. All right. Why are we picking him this week? Heavy duty, rugged, conquers the road like the Armada with capability and confidence. Dream big, go big. This is a guy right now that if you put next to Penei Sewell and Frank Ragnow would be amazing. Again, the Lions would likely have to trade up, maybe 15 to Atlanta, 17 to Tampa, something like that. They'd have to move up to get him because he's the best offensive lineman rated in this draft. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. And that's exactly what I think Tyler Booker can do here. It's clear that our player of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Thanks, everybody, for another great week of Locked On Lions. Appreciate all of you. Seriously, we would not be able to do what we do daily without our listeners, without our viewers. If you have Lion fan friends and they have not heard of the podcast or have not seen us, please let them know that we are here. You can follow us, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel as well. All right, I love PFF, Pro Football Focus. We're going to have Trevor Sikkema on, the PFF draft analyst and expert, likely next Wednesday. So I'm looking forward to talking to Trev, who's a phenomenal guy. And PFF wrote a big piece this week, basically highlighting all the needs and the state of the NFL franchises, Lions, Packers, Vikings, Bears in the division, everybody, going into 2 weeks from now. So for the Lions, they talk about remaining starter needs. All right. Now, for example, if you look at some other teams, like, for example, the Cleveland Browns, their remaining starter needs are quarterback and wide receiver. And then they have remaining depth and future needs. And it's like O-line, cornerback, edge, running back. The bad teams are listed heavily. Good teams, not so much. They have one need for the Lions when it comes to remaining starter needs, and that would be an edge rusher. So they don't believe Marcus Davenport will apparently be a starter or at least be healthy. As far as remaining depth, future needs, PFF has 2 positions. Number 1, guard. We just talked about that. And number 2 is very interesting, wide receiver. This is where Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell both specifically said at the owners' meetings last week, they're interested in a young wide receiver. And so PFF picked up on that. PFF writes about the Lions situation right now. Detroit re-signed Marcus Davenport to 1-year deal to fill out the other edge rusher spot next to Hutchinson, but the former Saint has never played more than 550 snaps in a single season. Effectively, the Lions need an every down presence next to Aiden, who himself is recovering from a season-ending injury. We're going to get to that in a second. Next paragraph. Following Kevin Zeitler's departure, the Lions appear ready to hand over the right guard keys to Christian Mahogany, who thrived there, 91.5 PFF overall grade, but on only 77 snaps last year. But given Mahogany's inexperience and Graham Glasgow's woes, 57.2 PFF overall grade, Detroit would be smart to invest at guard. Additionally, the Lions should draft a receiver, given that Tim Patrick and Khalif Raymond are free agents next spring. So there you have it. There was our PFF's thoughts on the state of the Lions, and I agree 100%. I've been agreeing with everything today, but seriously, I can't wait to see who this young wide receiver is going to be. And I'm interested in seeing when Brad Holmes pulls the trigger on this person. Because again, if there's a receiver they like at 28 and they feel like they can get edge rushers later and another O lineman later, would they actually go get a receiver at 28? Would it be somebody like Emeka Egbuka? Now, yesterday we talked about Emeka with Nick, and a lot of you on the YouTube comments were saying he's just like St. Brown, though. Is he an outside receiver or an inside guy? And they are built very similarly. So, yes, I think that would be intriguing. But I think a guard to push Mahogany and Glasgow has to happen, and an edge rusher has to happen. But you know what's great? That's really it. The Lions, I know, have been bringing in some safeties for depth to take a look at. You know, they're set at quarterback and at running back, and receiver for the most part is pretty healthy with the starters. Tight ends, there's plenty on this roster. Offensive line outside of guards, good shape. Maybe another depth tackle wouldn't be bad. And on defense, you know about the edge. Linebacker room is healthy. Secondary is pretty healthy. So I think where Pro Football Focus is kind of determining for the Lions in that spot is very accurate. All right. Marty Smith from ESPN caught up with Aidan Hutchinson at the Masters yesterday as he is down in Augusta, hanging out, walking the course as a spectator. And Marty Smith, who's known Hutchinson since college days, had a chance to sit down and interview him. This is about a minute long. Let's play this interview right now.
Defensive end Aidan Hutchinson, a Heisman finalist at the University of Michigan and a great friend. First of all, I'm proud of you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
All right. One of the things that Augusta National is best known for is the undulation, how hilly it is.
Mm-hmm.
How's that leg holding up this morning?
I'll tell you what. It feels amazing, man. It
Good.
feels amazing, and I can say I am grateful to be here. You know, you don't think about that undulation when you got a healthy leg, but now that I'm walking again, I've been walking, but now that I'm running full speed going, like you're grateful that when you walk, you don't feel pain. You know, so I think that's this injury has definitely made me very blessed for these moments, for sure.
Appreciate
Absolutely.
health more.
Oh, well, I mean, when you go from 1 second, you're just a high-performing athlete, running at full speed, bending corners, and the next one, you can't even get to the bathroom on your own. You know, it's a very humbling experience. So I think when you get all that stuff back, you don't take it for granted. That's for sure.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
All right, there it is. Aidan Hutchinson, the Lions' very own franchise edge rusher and awesome dude, and even better football. He's a great football player. Discussing a little bit of an update there as he's been able to walk. He talked about running. You guys have seen the videos that he's been posting, working out in Allen Park. He ran the full field the other day. And as Marty Smith pointed out, Augusta is very hilly. It's a lot of walking. It's a lot of endurance and pressure on your leg. Aidan Hutchinson broke his fibula and tibia last season. And the biggest question for the Lions, outside of Lee McNeil coming back from his torn ACL, is what Aidan Hutchinson is going to look like. Will he be that same explosive player? Listening to him talk right there, you just feel so optimistic because you know he is going to put his heart and soul, his blood, his sweat, his tears, everything into saying his prayers, eating his vitamins. He's going to put everything into that rehab and into trying to come back and play. And the fact that I think he sounds like he's ahead of schedule for right now. We are in April, and Aidan Hutchinson is not taking it easy. He's in Augusta, Georgia, walking hills, walking a course. He's not in a golf cart, right? He's not on crutches. He's making progress. And the biggest thing for Lions fans is, will Aidan Hutchinson be there the first week of September? That, folks, is 5 months away, not 5 weeks. So you love hearing that. He is just so vital. His health is so vital to this team's success. To their credit last year, I don't know how this team won as many games as they did without him. I don't. I just don't understand how it was done. They went 15-2, and he left the 6th game of the year against Dallas, 7th game. I mean, and they went on to win a lot of football games without him. They need him. They cannot afford to lose him again. So that's awesome news. You love hearing that. He's just such a great dude. And, the fact that he's walking around and he's down and traveling and doing normal things is a great sign. It's a must that the Lions get him back and healthy. All right. Our call of the day is coming up next. We will do that, and we will do that very, very soon. Coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. Quick reminder, folks, Jake Riepma, Locked On Sports Detroit. Find it on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts after every Red Wings game. There's only a few more left. Gosh, they're a disappointment. Pistons, once they get into the playoffs, right? Tigers, tonight in Minnesota, after the Tigers play the Twins. You want instant reaction? Jake Riepma has it on what is we call the postcast. A little bit on Locked On Sports Detroit. Jake Riepma, awesome. Right after Tigers and Twins tonight, we'll have the postcast. All right, folks, as you know, many of our everydayers like to chime in on the program and do so on our SpeakPipe voicemail system. It is our call of the day. We picked the best one today that we thought was the best. That's what I just said. And today's installment is brought to you by a guy by the name of Dylan Smith. He is our call of the day. Let's take a listen.
Hey, Matt, this is Dylan here from Iowa, everyday listener. With all these bigger contracts coming up, like Kirby Joseph, Aidan Hutchinson, and all those guys, what are some key replacements that you think we could draft in this year's draft? Like a Billy Bowman, potentially with that safety position, with maybe Kirby Joseph not being re-signed, because you can't sign everybody, and there's going to be guys who are going to be departing. So what are some guys that you think would be good replacements for the guys that we could lose potentially in 2026 or in 2027? So I had that question for you, and thanks.
All right, Dylan Smith, thank you very much. Look, here's the thing. Let's talk about this. He brings up a very good point. Right now, the Lions, the roster that they've put together has a lot of good football players. And what happens when you draft well and when you accumulate good football players, you then have to pay them. For the most part, General Manager Brad Holmes and his staff have done an incredible job, all right, in terms of drafting, developing, and retaining. Players want to stay here, right? There are plenty of other franchises that are complete buffoonery buffets, right? They get good players. They're not winning. And those players say, I'm hitting free agency. I don't want to stay. They, look at a guy like Kyle Hamilton with the Ravens. There is no way he'll ever leave Baltimore, or at least won't leave his second contract, because that's a good franchise. Aidan Hutchinson is not leaving Detroit. If the Lions were to somehow let Aidan Hutchinson walk or anything else, and his name was brought up by Dylan there, but there's no way, all right, that would ever take place. So with that being said, when you accumulate all of these players and you have talent, it's hard to keep everybody. You just can't. And I'm telling you right now, we talked about it yesterday with Nick on the show. Jamison Williams is probably not going to be here after next year. Or not this year, but the year after. They'll probably pick up his 5th-year option. He'll spend 5 years here. But the reason is wide receivers are expensive. Lions already have a close to 30, or they do have a $30 million receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown. And you can get a receiver late, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, whatever, that can be a high-impact guy. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 4th round pick. Look how that turned out. Now, that was an unbelievable get by Brad Holmes, but you get my point. So, for example, Dylan mentioned Billy Bowman. That was a weird Dylan name you dropped, but I like it. Billy Bowman is a safety at Oklahoma. He's a really, really good player. Probably not a 1st-round pick, probably more of a 2nd or 3rd-round pick. Is that a guy that the Lions look up and say, the kid Jalen Reed from Penn State, Jay Reed, any of these guys that the Lions have been bringing in, are these the answers at safety if they can't retain Kirby Joseph? I'm here to tell you Brad Holmes is going to do everything in his power to keep Kirby here. because that's a guy that, especially this past season, really stepped up and really was an important cog on that defense. He was the center fielder. He was the last line of defense, a defense on a lot of occasions. So to sit here and go, yeah, in the 2025 draft, the Lions are going to take somebody to replace somebody down the road, I don't necessarily know if that's the case yet. He mentioned Bowman. Yes, there's other safety candidates out there. If the Lions were to take an Emeka Egbuka at 28 or somebody of that ilk, a late first round, early second round wide receiver, yes, that player would likely be J-Mo's replacement in a couple of years, because that player would be under contract for 4 or 5 years. And Jameson could get $30 million somewhere else. Brad Holmes said it at the owners' meetings. Wide receivers get expensive. They've got to pay Jahmyr Gibbs, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Aidan Hutchinson. Eventually, Ragnow's going to have another contract that's up. Sam Laporta. Right? They've retained Sewell and McNeil and others. And that's great. Jared Goff, Amon-Ra. Can't keep everybody. It's just not reality. I think Kirby Joseph, though, is going to stay. I do. I think they'll find a way to keep him because that defense needs him. But good question, Dylan. Thank you for chiming in. All right, that'll do it for another episode of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. For a Friday, have a great weekend, everybody. We got Mock Draft Monday. We'll have that for you next week right here on Locked On Lions.